Hi, I'm Quinn Lemley with Secrets of the Stage. This is the place where we pull back the curtains and we dive into the creative process. And today I am so excited because I have a cultural icon and a world ambassador. And so I'd like to play a little clip before my introduction.
I'm Yue-Sai Kan. Hello, I'm Yue-Sai Kan.
Hi, I'm Yue-Sai Kan. People magazine called me the most famous woman in China because just a few decades ago, people all over China saw me on television every week. My pursuit of spreading more humanity and understanding around the world has led me to meet world leaders, celebrities, and travel to numerous countries. Join me as we experience the flavors, people, and cultures that make our one world special.
Yue-Sai, I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here.
You are such a role model for women and for children and for people coming together in the world.
Yeah, well, thank you. I want to say something. You have a beautiful studio today.
Thank you.
And I see that it's M and N, right? Mm-hmm. I remember when I first started television, I had absolutely no budget, no nothing. That M and N at that time was unbelievably simple. Mm-hmm. I think 2 rattan chairs and a fake tree in the back, that's all
Right.
I got. And I think my first audience, Queen, was probably a total of 2. My mother and my father. Mm-hmm. So it was a very humble, I would say, beginning. Mm-hmm. And then of course, what is interesting is what happened afterwards.
Well, let's talk about that. So you were doing M&N before you started the CCTV?
I did my first TV series, Looking East, about Asian culture on M&N, actually.
Wow.
So what happened is that in those days, cable just first came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now cable is, not so big anymore, but in those days it just came out, and in fact there was no such a thing as ENN. Cable,
Right.
And no such thing. And I remember at that time I was very gung-ho about promoting Asian cultures in this country because nobody knew anything about Asia.
Well, this was when the world was opening up,
just
right?
In America,
Yes.
nobody cared. I remember Mike Wallace said to me, "Oh, don't do a show about it. You're wasting your time. Asia, nobody cares about." And of course, in those days, a lot of people didn't know anything about Asia. This is the Temple of Heaven. It is the symbol of Beijing. Today is different. It is the biggest and the fastest growing area of the world in the whole Asia. In those days, in the Americans' mindset, it's a black hole. There's some place. Especially
This
China.
was in the late 70s, early 80s.
You remember. In those days, China was like a black hole. Nobody even knew that it sort of existed because we couldn't go inside and Chinese could not come out. So it was a very enclosed area, particularly in China, such a huge country. But the rest of Asia was just as bad. So what is interesting is that I said, but I do think that there is a certain population that really would like to know something about Asia. And so I started a show called Looking East. Now, in those days, I made it into a national show. You know how I did it?
How did you do it?
There were about 12 areas in America. And then these 12 areas control different parts of America. And so I made 12 tapes every week. And I shipped them to all the stations. So I syndicated my own show. Right?
Well, you are such a pioneer, an entrepreneur, and you're thinking ahead and connecting all the dots. So when you started working with the Chinese government, with Chinese television, you were opening the portals for both the West and the East.
Well, that was much later. I was doing Looking East for quite some time. So PBS came to me one day in 1984, 48 hours before October 1st, which is their 35th anniversary. And at that time, PBS came to me and said, "Hey, Yue-Sai, we are in trouble. We signed a contract with China Central Television, which is the only network in China." And he said, they said, Yue-Sai, we were going to broadcast the anniversaries parade to America for the first time. The first joint venture. He said, we're going to be in deep trouble because we just found out that this first joint venture had no narration at all. It just had
just footage?
Footage coming through. So they came to me and they said, hey, you have been doing a show called Looking East. You must know something about China. So, of course, I said, yes. Actually, I knew very little bit about China.
You didn't even speak Chinese.
I didn't speak, you're right. I didn't even speak Chinese. And so I remember 48 hours, I used every second with two of my assistants. We were researching everything about China at that time. I just knew what was coming through. I didn't know anything else. What was coming through, a military parade, the PLA, People's Liberation Army, there's Navy, there's the air. There's something called the Beijing Model Family Float coming through, right, in Tiananmen. And there's another called the #1 document float coming through. Those are the names that I got. It's 2 hours. Okay, so I'm telling you, I was just desperate. I was working so hard trying to pull as much information as, hey, those were not the days, 84, not the days of internet. It was really difficult to find anything about China in those days. So, but I finished with a stack of paper this big, and to go into the studio to try to, when the pictures come through, I had to be.
You were narrating it, right?
I was explaining these pictures, right? So it was a really, really a very difficult thing. But because of that, I made the first joint venture between China and America, PBS, successful for the first time.
That's exciting.
For the first time. So the Chinese government said, whoa, there's a person called Yue-Sai Kan. She knew something about China. Well, we would like to, first of all, thank her. So what happened was they invited me to China. And I remember inviting me to China at that time was very difficult because I was working very hard on producing my show, right? But between between Christmas and New Year was the only time. In America, that's the best time. I went to China. They, in the conversation, of course, they treated me to dinner.
Of course, the banquets and
yeah, that was really wonderful.
The hospitality.
People, great hall of the people, it was a big deal, to be treated there for dinner. And anyway, so I remember they were talking about, they said we wanted to open China. They also knew that their people did not know a single thing about the outside world. They've been enclosed. They're like a bubble, right? And then, of course, Westerners, foreigners, had no idea what China was all about. So they said, would you produce a TV series called One World for us? So that is supposed to be a series to introduce the world for the first time to that audience, that specific audience that is totally ignorant about the outside world. So I had the privilege and the obligation, of course, and because if look, Quinn, if you were asked to do something like this, won't you?
Of course.
Of course you do. There's so much television that nobody cared about. In those days, I just knew that if I could produce something like that, it would have been amazing.
Well, and
just
sharing
amazing.
the cultures.
Yes. So I went to 16 countries. Every time I went into the country, I would do a 6-part series to explain the culture, the history. So it's an interesting series because it starts with a zero, sort of meaning that it starts from very, very fundamental to pretty sophisticated information. My opening show was New York.
Oh, really? And what did you show about New York?
Okay, very importantly, I showed New York as a city of ethnic villages.
Beautiful.
In a country of immigrants. This is the exact opposite of China, because China had no immigrants, no immigration at all, right? And the Chinese are so monolithic, well, the same.
Right.
You would never find a Chinese like you in China.
When I was there, everybody would touch my hair.
They
I'd have
think that
50 people around me.
Yeah,
They would follow me around.
Exactly. You would be looking like someone from Mars, right?
Right.
So, but all of us in China look exactly like me. Black hair, black eyes, flat nose, round face. You know what I mean? In those days, it's worse, is that we were all wearing the same kind of clothes. Same kind of clothes. You know, the grayish, the brownish.
Very depressing.
Yeah, there was no color.
Well, but you brought color to China.
Yes. Yeah, later on when I created the cosmetic company, I brought color to China. But during the TV shooting, I was encouraged by the Chinese leadership to shoot my TV series the way I would be shooting it for my American shows. That really meant that so different from what they had on their TV network. What do they have there on TV network? Their host had no makeup on. They wore the same kind of hairdo, you know, maybe with braids and gray color and maybe with a white shirt. That's really all they wore.
Was there, there would be no advertising too? It would be
Of course no
state-run,
advertising.
right?
Of course no advertising. There was no commercialization. There was nothing to sell in those days.
Did you do commercialization as well? Or
Well,
like
that's a good question because when they asked me to do the show, I said, money, money, money. You have to give me money. I've got a television, especially in those days, it was very expensive. You know, everywhere you go to a country, you do need to have at least 2 television crews, and you need a lot of the tapes were this big, remember?
Yes.
You know, really. So in other words, you know, I had like 12 big trunks going to every city, every
How big
country.
were your crews?
2 crews, like 12 people. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a very, very expensive crew. So I asked the Chinese for money. They said, well, we love to have the series, but we have no money. And so I said, okay, let's do this. You give me commercial time and let me try to find advertising for you. So for my production, not really so much for them because they don't benefit from that, except the TV show was free for them.
And so how did you go about getting sponsors?
So I was making a research as to who actually in those days was already trying to do business in China. Well, let me tell you, the first commercial that came in was Maxwell House Coffee.
Oh my goodness! I just had some this morning. Because that was all they had in the bodega.
Well, let me tell you, what is interesting is that Maxwell House Coffee was the first time they were trying to market to China, and in China nobody was drinking coffee at that time.
Only tea.
This is amazing. China is a country of tea.
The tea, right?
This is the first time, and they were shocked because they sold out everything in 3 months. So they were very, very pleased. And today, the coffee culture is huge.
Really?
In China.
Interesting.
Huge. In Shanghai alone, every month they sell 100 million cups of coffee. In my little street, I have a home in Shanghai. In my little street, it's like half a block. There were 8 coffee bars. China has changed a great deal. It's so sophisticated now. Their ability to accept something new is something that actually shocks me. The Chinese, right? So one of the most wonderful thing or the worst thing about my series for China is they say to themselves, whoa, is this what the world is all about? Look for example, my first show about New York, right? I took them to my home. We had dinner, they shot us. So in other words, I took them all over the place, you know, in New York. New York is a fascinating city.
It is.
Because it truly is an immigrant city, right? You go to Chinatown, you go to Arab town, you go to all different places. It's so fascinating for them. So they would say to themselves, whoa, is that what the world is all about?
Well, you were the portal, and if they didn't have the internet, you were the internet.
It was really the beginning of the opening of China. So I was participating in that sense. I'm an American, you know. I mean, I'm part of the opening of China, right? And then later on, I launched cosmetics.
Let's talk about that. You were talking about the grayness and the sameness, and how did you get the idea?
Having gone through television experience in China, I realized that the Chinese were very, very gung-ho about opening. For sure, they were going to open, for sure. So I didn't mind investing the money into opening a company in China. I was sure of it. So in other words, that was just something that I knew would not be a bad thing to do. However, I was requested, I was asked, the vice premier received me in 1989, 1990. And he said, Tiananmen incident just happened, and all the foreign companies were leaving.
Oh my goodness.
Everybody was leaving, and he was the minister. He was the vice premier in charge of foreign investments. So he said, "Why don't you come in and do business, Yue-Sai? And your husband is a businessman. I just got married." He said, "Why don't you do this? If you do that, it will be so nice because you're very famous, and it will make us look very good, and we would love to welcome you." So my at that time husband asked me, "Hey, what would you do if you were to start a company?" I said, "I want to do makeup." He was shocked because how can you say makeup? No one in China, well, I cannot say no one. The hookers will use makeup. The people on stage will use makeup. But other than those people, nobody was using makeup. You need to educate the entire population.
So how did you educate them?
Well, I used television. I did a lot of television interviews. I did a lot of lectures. I traveled around the whole country, and I lectured the Chinese how to use cosmetics. Because if you don't know it, you don't know. Beauty is education.
Right.
If you are not educated, you don't know what to do.
Right.
You really don't know, right? I mean, if you've never seen even foundation, how do you smear it on, right? I mean, seriously.
No, I know. It was so funny because my pianist, he had an accident and he was healing and he had to go get foundation. And he said, "I think I'm going to keep doing this. My skin looks so flawless. It's perfect."
Well, the most important thing is that they had their ability to accept new things. And and I always loved this color of lipstick. And the Chinese, you even at that time, used this color. It is shocking to think that they never put anything on their lips before, and they are able to accept the fact they'd be using a color this dark on their lips. But this is the personality of Chinese. You really need to understand. A lot of people ask me, you say, how does a Chinese from the poorest of poor? Remember what first time I went to China, there was no car. There was just bicycles, okay? Only bicycles. My car was the first car because I was an important VIP, so I had a car to take me around. But in those days, bicycles. Today, China produces the most incredible cars I have ever seen in my life. They are so sophisticated. In fact, my very, very fancy Chinese friends today are giving up their Maybachs, they're giving up their Rolls Royces, they're buying their
Chinese cars,
electric cars, and they're the biggest producers of electric cars. As a matter of fact, I used to go to China and my eyes would tear because there is so much pollution. But today, the sky is blue. It's very important. If you look at the parking lot, there will be every electric car is green. How do you call it? Green labels.
Right.
Green plates. Okay, and if it is just a regular one, it's blue plates. And you are in the garage, you'll find that about four cars, 3 of them will be green. That really means that China is on its way to a really almost carbon zero
That's
society.
Wonderful. We need to do that here. We're trying.
No,
I mean,
you're not
New
trying.
York, but I mean,
No, we're not trying. We're not, no way trying even hard. If you think that the electric car is a good thing to do, then in that case, we are not trying hard enough in America. Let me explain. If I say 3 out of 4 are electric cars in China, and do you find anything close to that in this country?
No.
Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, when they decided to have electrical cars, guess what they do? They actually build 4 million plugs. Chargers
I mean, that's the problem
around
in
the
this
country. Guess how many we built here? 160,000. So, of course, we are not trying enough. We need to try harder. We need to try harder because that's how we're going to survive this deterioration of the planet.
Of the planet, right?
So my saying also is that how does China, for from the poorest of poorest of poor, okay, to today, the second biggest economy in the world. Yeah, I'm sure that they did steal something, right? And I'm very sure, I think they're very grateful that the United States helped them. They go into the WTO and all of these things. But the Chinese personality is great. Not just are they able to use a lipstick, it's no big deal, lipstick, right? But the ability to accept new things. Let me tell you.
Right.
For example, today when you go to China to eat a dinner, the chances are that you will order a bottle of red wine, white wine. There was never such a thing in America. I give a dinner at home, people will bring a bottle of red or white wine. When I first went there 40 years ago, there was no such a thing. They never know how to use red wine or white wine. They only have their own liquors. They have their own liquors, like Mao Tai, Wuliangye. This is their liquor, right? It's very different from red wine and white wine, okay? But today,
well,
are you ready?
I had Sir Gary Kong on here, and he with his #1 wine.
Guess what? Today, the Chinese are huge collectors of wines. Some of the biggest collectors of wine, I'm talking about red wine, white wine, okay, that we drink here. They are huge collectors. They are the huge buyers of vineyards around the world. They are now building vineyards in China that are so good that they are winning awards everywhere.
Wow.
What is it? What does that mean to me? Is that they are able to accept a lot of new things, and they will learn. They will learn, and they work very, very hard to become what they are today. My sister Vicky, she used to bring textile mills, textile machines from Italy to China. She used to sell them. Today, what the Chinese had done, they improved upon those machines. They are so good today that my sister is selling them back to the Italians.
Wow, that's incredible. They're innovative. I mean,
they hard working. Oh my God! One time I wanted to build the first China doll in China, and there was something very new for me. So I decided that I'm going to learn to make dolls.
What kind of dolls were they?
They're like dolls, just like dolls, with black hair. There was none in China, so I made a black hair doll with features like mine. It's called Yue-Sai doll. Okay.
Okay.
So what happened was that I went to the biggest factory in Guangzhou. So I went there to produce, and the owner himself, which is he's a very large producer of Disney toys, and I remember he and I used to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning to complete the details of the doll.
How exciting.
What I'm saying is that these people work. These people work like crazy people. I'm talking about the Chinese people in China.
I know.
And it's crazy.
You gave them something to work on.
Oh my God! I mean, they work, and this guy, is. Let me tell you, I remember, when we first started having cell phones. We started having cell phones. And I remember the name cards. The Chinese always gave you a name card, right? The name card always has their cell phones on it. And I was very amused by that because in America, nobody would put their cell phone in it because they think it's the invasion of privacy.
The Chinese always had it on?
Yes, because they work 24/7. I mean, even I was working 24/7 because I was working between New York, America, and China. I mean, how do you deal with it? Of course, you're working 24 hours almost, right? I never had vacations. When people told me, oh, have a good weekend, I didn't know what that really meant. I had no weekend. For years and years, I never had vacations.
Now, but you're always working on something new. I want to get to your new series that's so exciting on YouTube. One World.
Yes.
And it is so exciting. And you just did a series that hit how many millions of viewers?
Well, I just launched it 6 months ago.
That's incredible.
And because I think that people need to know more about each other.
They do.
A lot of the misunderstanding and the fear it's all because of ignorance.
Yes,
so I think the
absolutely.
more we do cultural shows, the more we can understand each other, the better it is going to be for the world, right? I decided that with all these horrible things going on in the world, I said, let me try something on social media. I used to do a very serious documentary.
Right.
Hello, I'm Yue-Sai Kan. Welcome to whatever show I was doing, right? Very serious, very, very serious, right? But now social media, I don't care. I go and
You're trying things.
That's right. I mean, I would go into mud with no
I saw you
shoes,
do
right?
that.
Right. I mean, I will. But what is exciting that right now I have about 350,000 subscribers. It's pretty wonderful, right? I mean, I didn't expect that. And then what is interesting is that in all the episodes, the most successful and the most successful is almost 3 million viewers.
And that was on.
Soup dumpling.
And this was in. Was this in Shanghai?
Shanghai. Yeah, it was so much fun.
And what did you? And so what did you learn about soup dumpling that you didn't know before?
Well, I myself know a great deal about soup dumplings because it's my favorite. But then this restaurant is about 126 years old.
Oh.
And so we were there learning how to do it.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, the whole series, I do Hawaii now. I do, and right now airing is about Egypt. Yeah.
Yes, we were talking about that in the new museum in Egypt.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So we're almost out of time. If you had one word of advice for people to follow their creative spirit and passion, what would you say?
Follow your passion. You work very hard. Because when you do things, you learn. And if you make mistakes, change it. Because if you don't do it at all, you're never going to learn.
Yes, I know. I always say there's always pizza if your meal doesn't work out. Yue-Sai Kan, thank you so much for being here.
Quinn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Quinn Lemley with Secrets of the Stage. We air every Sunday night at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on mnn.org, Channel 4, or you can visit me on Spotify, Apple TV, or at quinnlemley.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Until next time, I'm Quinn Lemley with Secrets of the Stage.